Hi, my name is Shama Patel. I am president and founder of Aerial Fitness. It's an aerial fitness training program that strengthens the core and tones the abs. And I left my career as a corporate attorney back in 2010, I believe, to launch my first studio, which I opened in 2011. And it's just evolved since then and opened the first air studio in 2013 here in Chicago, and it's just kind of taken off since then. Yeah, so when I left my career as a corporate attorney, there were a lot of fears surrounding leaving such a stable career and taking a chance on something that honestly could have failed. So, along the lines, it all started from when I first quit my job. I think there was a lot of self-doubt, and I think there was a lot of doubt amongst friends and family members as well in terms of, are you sure you know what you're doing? So that was one of the fears, just a failure. And then once I started, putting the pieces together and making sure that this is the route that I wanted to go down, I faced a lot of rejection from bank loans to start with. And so, that was a fear, if I don't get a bank loan, how am I going to open up this studio? Did I make a mistake leaving my stable career? So there was just some of the fears that were surrounding the transition from corporate America into entrepreneurship. So one of the ways I combated a lot of these fears of self-doubt and, just these fears circling around, getting bank loans, things like that, is I had a lot of self-confidence. So I think that's one thing that a lot of entrepreneurs need to have. It's a very lonely road, entrepreneurship, and if you don't have that self-confidence to keep telling yourself that it's going to be okay, keep powering through, I really don't think you get through it. And as far as when I started applying for bank loans, I probably applied for close to 10 loans with different banks, with different regional and local banks, and I got rejected from all of them. And what I learned, obviously in the end, I ended up getting one, and that's a whole different story. But through that experience, I learned that as an entrepreneur, you really have to have patience, stamina, drive, and perseverance. And as long as you have those things to keep powering through, it doesn't end up turning into a rejection. You don't end up throwing in the towel. You just keep going through and become stronger through that experience. So entrepreneurship can be extremely lonely. Some of the ways that I have kind of combated that loneliness is, like I mentioned earlier, you develop a lot of self-confidence, and that self-confidence comes with experience. In the beginning, when you first start out, I think the best advice I can give is develop a really strong filter. There are people who you should be reaching out to as mentors, and these people, you need to make sure that they're in a very similar industry, or they have a lot of experience, and they are actually giving you advice that is sound, versus individuals who just are creating doubt in your mind. That I would put more in the noise category versus sound advice. So develop a really strong filter, because you don't want to be stubborn and dismiss the sound advice, because it really will keep you from potentially making a fatal mistake. But you also need to develop that filter, because you need to kind of filter out that noise, and that's what's going to kind of eat away your self-confidence over time. So that's my best advice in terms of combating that loneliness. As far as creating a balance between, work, like self-care, things like that, for me personally, I don't think right now is a good time for balance. That might change in 6 months, I don't know, but I like staying focused at the opportunity I have at hand, understanding what I have, and just taking advantage of that. So there's a lot of things that I end up not being a part of that I might want to attend a Christmas party, or I might want to attend a birthday party, but there's just not a lot of time for socializing right now. It's just kind of take care of the goal at hand. When you first start a business, if you feel like an imposter when you take on this new challenge, my 3 pieces of advice in making sure that you overcome this fear of feeling like an imposter is first piece of advice is have experience in the field that you're entering in. You should, either you've worked at the front desk, let's just say you're opening up a fitness studio. Having a certification and being a trainer is not enough experience. You need to understand different parts of the business in terms of operations, marketing, front desk, software, a lot of other areas. So have experience. If you don't have experience, the second piece of advice would be to educate yourself. I think that every entrepreneur, whether new or seasoned, has to constantly be educating themselves in terms of what's new in the market, what are the trends, what are your clients wanting, because at the end of the day, it is a supply-demand sort of thing. And you should not be scared in educating yourself by volunteering or trying to do an unpaid internship. This is valuable information that you're going to gather by just kind of understanding the industry that you're in. And the third piece of advice I would say is have passion in the business that you're actually in. If you're getting into it because you think it's going to make you a quick buck, you're probably not going to be there for very long. So have passion, because when you have that passion, you're going to be the one sitting there at the computer at midnight, like Googling new things, that you can do to improve your business. Whereas if it's just something that's boring to you, you're probably never going to be an innovator and keep it, changing and moving along. A time that I failed and how I overcame it and what I learned from that experience was back in 2010 when I first quit my job and was out to find an SBA loan. So I had shopped around like 10 regional banks and everyone had rejected me. So finally I was like, okay, let me do a little bit of research. Let's pull a list of the banks that actually make the most SBA loans. So I found that list and I looked into every government and grant program there possibly was to get this business loan. Well, I had stupidly already signed a lease with Wells Fargo, who was the landlord on the largest retail space in the Duke Energy Tower, which is in Charlotte, North Carolina. And I signed a lease and I didn't have a loan yet. And I figured I'll get it figured out. I'm confident I'm going to get the loan. So I actually took that list from top banks that make SBA loans, and I took my lease and I took a really strong, solid business plan. And I walked into a banker's meeting with a lot of confidence, and I basically leveraged the lease to have them make a loan. Basically showing that if a large landlord like Wells Fargo was confident enough in me to give me a lease, you should be confident enough to extend me a loan. And that's honestly how I got my SBA loan. And I was like in the middle of construction basically, because we also had money that the landlord was giving us. So we had started construction with that money and then secured the loan as a result. So very bold move. I don't recommend it all the time. It was very risky, but I overcame it. And I think that if I had, like I said, thrown in the towel after like the first or second rejection, I wouldn't be where I am today. And all it tells you is that you just need that one to work. You don't need 10 different options to work. You need to keep powering through and make sure that one option works, and that could kind of be like your key to success. So my experience with failure, how I combated it, and how frequently I experienced it. In the beginning, I would say probably very often. I would legitimately wake up in the middle of the night in like night sweats, wondering how I was going to solve, a problem that we had at hand. I'll be honest, there were days where I was like, how am I going to make payroll next month? They're very real fears when you're in a business. And what I realized is the lows are like depression style lows, okay? But that means the highs are right around the corner as well. And it's a roller coaster ride, entrepreneurship. So when you start becoming more experienced, you learn to control those emotions. You don't want to go through this every day. You want this. So you control your emotions. You don't make decisions based on emotions. You make them based on logic. So I think that's the way I combated it, is I never make business decisions based on emotion. It's pure strategy and logic. And once you have control in so many areas, including emotions, fear really goes away. I mean, I would say I'm pretty fearless as it relates to business. There's nothing that scares me. I mean, even if I fall on my face, I know I can pick myself up and just keep moving through.